Here at Defunct Games, we love Nightdive. Over the last few years, they've managed to breathe new life into outdated first-person shooters through expertly made remasters. This includes loving updates to the Turok games, Blade Runner, Dark Forces, and even The Thing. With so many classic games getting the Nightdive upgrade, I thought it might be fun to give the Atari-owned company the Review Crew treatment, starting with two 3DO games that were recently re-released, Killing Time and PO'd. Look, that's genuinely cool news, and I love that these lesser-known shooters are getting a second life on modern consoles. But were any of these games actually worth playing back in 1995? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, GamePro, Next Generation, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when these games first came out. Oh, I sure hope you brought a swimming suit because this is the debut episode of Nightdive Review Crew.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with? Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
By 1995, Doom had already made the jump from PC to gaming consoles, with ports on everything from the Super Nintendo to the 32X to the Atari Jaguar. More importantly, Doom's influence was starting to be felt far and wide thanks to the influx of developers who wanted to make their own first-person shooters. One of those was Killing Time from the 3DO company for their fledgling 32-bit console. Similar to Doom, Killing Time was a horror-based shooter where a character had to fight their way through a series of increasingly complicated mazes. It stars a former Egyptology student who's trapped with a bunch of ghosts and monsters in the estate of a wealthy heiress on a small island off the coast of Maine. What sets it apart from Doom, and most of the other first-person shooters of that era, is the way that it incorporates full-motion video into the action, helping us understand the storied history of this secluded estate. With a genuinely compelling mystery and a whole lot of fast-paced first-person action, Killing Time was seen as a killer app for the 3DO system at a time when they really needed it the most. Now, when it comes to the critics, the reviews are remarkably close, with pretty much everybody agreeing that the score 80% is more than fair. Hell, even the lowest score is only a point away from that magical number, as Computer and Video Games gave Killing Time a score of 79%. The novelty of both full-motion video adventure games and Doom rip-offs has worn off, though Killing Time manages to catch your interest by combining the two genres into one. The graphics aren't quite as smooth as Space Hulk, but they're really detailed, and the excellent sound combined makes for a great atmosphere. Still, there are a few annoying problems. Though the playing area spans lots of locations, there are only 16 different enemy types. Another problem is that the game's frustrating. This is probably because the designers tried to make the game hard by not giving you much ammo, though this just leaves you sprinting away from people until you die. For all that, if you want an interesting challenge that's quite different from anything else, Killing Time is the one to go for. While most of the reviews were in that 80% range, there was one outlier that went high, really high. A short-lived UK publication known as 3DO Magazine gave Killing Time a perfect 5 out of 5, calling it a true mega game. In its plot, its realistic sets, and the digitized and superimposed full-motion video supporting characters, Killing Time acquires many of the best features of movies without suffering the penalty of a linear plot and simplistic gameplay. In the future, this is how all games will be. Alright, now that we've looked at the extremes, it's time to really focus on that 80% score that I keep bringing up. That's what GamePro gave it when they went with a score of 4 out of 5. This was also the average among the game fan critics, who were impressed by the mix of first-person shooting and the full-motion video. Game players did go a little bit higher with an 83%, but the magazine that I want to focus on now is Next Generation. Giving the game a score of 4 out of 5, they summed it up this way. The joke goes like this. It's just like Doom, except insert difference here. And in this case, the difference is substantial enough to make our staff sit up and take notice. There's an actual mystery to solve underneath all the action that includes enemy zombies, chefs, and ducks. That's right, ducks! It's the same thing, only different since you get a chance to use your brain as well as your reflexes. In short, Killing Time is the bastard child of Doom and Seventh Guest. And it works! While it might not be as well known as other Nightdive remasters, Killing Time was a great choice. It was well received at the time, despite its limitations, and the modern facelift will help to remind people that this was a game that actually had some fresh and unique ideas. This is a real highlight of the ill-fated 3DO.
Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously. The intense realism of Panasonic Real 3DO. Apparently. Or the mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO. Definitely. Cool. The Real 3DO system from Panasonic.
Released just days after Killing Time, PO'd is yet another stab at bringing the Doom formula to the 3DO. The gimmick here is that it actually had a sense of humor and swaps out the horror themes with more science fiction. It tells the story of what happens when a chef's spaceship crash lands on an alien world, forcing him to fight through level after level of maze-like stages. Given the tongue-in-cheek approach, a lot of the game doesn't take itself too seriously, as you'll see when you smack aliens away with a frying pan or just drill people at will. While certainly humorous, the game actually offers some unique ideas, such as giving the player a jetpack, allowing the level designs to be more vertical than most first-person shooters. There really were some fun ideas in PO'd, but was that enough to win over the critics? Once again, it all comes down to which magazine you were reading at the time. For example, GamePro gave the game a 3 out of 5 and complained about the controls. PO'd is a great Doom clone, but not as much fun because of the obvious control problems. If you have a 3DO, you don't have Doom yet, so PO'd is the next best thing. Although the control will get you PO'd, the rest of the game is okay. As we move up the scale, we see Edge give the 3DO game a 7 out of 10, which if we're being honest, really isn't that bad for them. Video games and computer entertainment went 1 point higher, giving PO'd a score of 8 out of 10. That is, more or less, the same as Next Generation, who went with the 4 out of 5. They summed it up this way. This game had its genesis, quite literally we're told, in somebody's garage as a labor of love by a handful of programmers. It certainly has the hallmarks of being somebody's obsession, which is both a blessing and a curse. There's a decidedly twisted attitude behind it all. It moves very smoothly, and you aren't just limited to walking. The cook can jump, fly, and even do backflips. However, many of the levels are so intricate, with textures and color schemes that tend to blend in with one another, that it's also extremely confusing and often more frustrating than enjoyable. It's well done, very well done, but too tricky for its own good. Now, before we look at the highest scores, it's worth mentioning that this 3DO game was also ported to the PlayStation. Pretty much across the board, the magazine that liked the 3DO version gave the PlayStation port a lower score, mostly complaining that it didn't take advantage of the more powerful hardware. Instead of going through all the different reviews, I'm just going to focus on Electronic Gaming Monthly's Mark, who sums up the problem succinctly. One would think that when a game is ported over to a technically more advanced system, it would be vastly improved. This isn't the case with PO'd. There is a slight graphic and speed increase, but overall, it's the same old cheesy PO'd. If you've never played the 3DO version, that's okay. I'll give PO'd one thing, it's funny, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. There's plenty of weapons to find and various puzzles to complete, but overall, it's just a sloppy game that lacks the precision and detail. EGM gave the PlayStation version an average score of 6.1 out of 10. Alright, contrary to that incredibly negative reaction, there were quite a few magazines that genuinely loved PO'd. For example, the editors at GameFan ended up giving the game an average score of 89%. Over in Australia, Hyper went even higher, giving it a score of 93%. It's easily one of the highest scores they gave any 3DO game. But if you're looking for the very tippy top of the scale, then we're going to need to go back to the UK and check in with our good friends over at 3DO Magazine. Giving it a perfect 5 out of 5, the exact same score they gave Killing Time, the editors at 3DO Magazine argued that PO'd really is something genuinely new. It has neither the elaborate problems of Killing Time nor the comparatively straightforward, highly confined action of Doom. It offers far more freedom of movement and tactics than either of those games. To a certain extent, its very openness works against conventional addiction. It's not immediately obvious how to play this game, and the designers have avoided forcing you down a single route. Yet, for more open-minded players, particularly Doom fans looking for the next leap forward, this eerily beautiful, quite ferocious blast 'em up is a dream come true. This is, without a doubt, one of the very best 3DO titles around. Quite something considering the hot titles coming through, and on a personal level, it's quite the best game I've ever played. Check it out. Wow, now that's a recommendation. It's not one I fully agree with, but boy, I'll admit, 3DO Magazine almost had me convinced. Much like Killing Time, this is really another great candidate for Nightdive. It's more than just a clone, adding humor, open levels, and new types of gameplay to the formula. Boy, I bet those indie developers who were slaving away in a garage just to make this passion project are shocked that people are still enjoying it and talking about it 3 decades later. Now that is something to celebrate.
You're working late tonight.
The passive type probably plays Nintendo.
You're working late tonight. I can't. I got therapy.
The aggressive type probably plays Sega.
You're working late tonight.
Could we try that with a knock?
And the other type definitely plays 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. Now $3.99 plus free games.
Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes anytime classic games get added to modern consoles. We're already doing this with the Nintendo Switch Online and PlayStation Plus, so expect to see future episodes of Nightdive Review Crew in some of the off weeks. Also, check out our playlist when you have a chance. Now, here's the question I have for you. What game should Nightdive remaster next? Look, I love that they're tackling so many of these first-person shooters. But I'd like to see them remaster something like San Francisco Rush, or maybe that Colony Wars game. Something that, is out of their wheelhouse a little bit. I'm excited to see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back on Monday with a review of Tetris Forever. I've been playing that all week, and trust me, I have a lot to say about this one. Why wait for that? I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,